The words hit me like a hammer to the chest. Either pay rent or get out of this house, Dad. My own daughter standing in the kitchen we once remodeled together, her eyes sharp as broken glass, telling me I was no longer welcome under the very roof I built with my own hands 20 years ago. Her husband Michael sat silently at the table, eyes glued to his phone, unwilling to step in. For a moment I couldn't breathe. The bills she had slammed in front of me blurred into nothing but white paper, and all I could hear was the echo of her words, "Get out." That was the moment something inside me cracked. The day had started simply enough. I was sitting by the window with my coffee, the September air cool and clean, watching the maple leaves begin to turn. My granddaughter Sophie had greeted me on her way out to class at Missouri State, her voice warm, her brown ponytail swinging as she kissed my cheek. That girl was the last bright light in this house. She still saw me as family, not as a burden. But when Anna came down the stairs that morning, her heels clicking across the tile like a judge's gavel, everything changed. She dropped the envelope of bills in front of me with a snap. "Taxes are up, insurance is higher, utilities are killing us. You'll need to start paying more if you want to stay here," she said, arms crossed, chin lifted. I stared at the papers, then at her. "I already pay you every month," I reminded her softly. "Not enough," she snapped. "It's time you stop freeloading. Michael and I can't keep carrying you while you sit here all day watching TV." Her words stung more than I wanted to admit. Watching TV, is that all she thought I was now? A useless old man wasting away in the corner. I wanted to shout the truth that this house was mine, had always been mine. That I had bought it outright back in 2002 after Linda and I scraped and saved for decades, and that I had signed the deed in my own name. That every rent check I gave Anna was nothing more than money moving from one account to another, a charade to keep the peace after Linda passed. But the words stuck in my throat. I folded the bills carefully, slipped them into my shirt pocket, and nodded like I agreed. Like I deserved to be treated as a tenant in my own home. Michael cleared his throat, glanced at the clock, and muttered something about needing to get to the office. He pressed a kiss to Anna's cheek, then slipped out the door, leaving just the two of us. She stood there, her arms still crossed, watching me like a landlord waiting for a tenant's answer. "So what's it going to be, Dad? Can you pay, or do I need to find somewhere else for you?" The kitchen was heavy with silence. I could hear the refrigerator humming, the faint tick of the wall clock, even my own pulse in my ears. My legs felt weak when I finally stood, but steady enough to carry me down the hall to my room on the first floor. I closed the door behind me and leaned against it, letting the echo of her words circle in my head. Pay rent or get out. On the desk sat a photograph of Linda, my late wife, smiling in the sunlight of a long-ago summer. I picked it up, my fingers trembling. "I don't know where I went wrong, Linda," I whispered. "Maybe I gave too much. Maybe I failed to teach them what respect really means." Through the thin walls, I heard Anna moving about the kitchen, slamming cabinets, her heels striking the tile in sharp bursts. I sank into the chair by the window and stared out at Maplewood Lane, at the rows of houses shaded by turning leaves. Everything looked peaceful, but inside me a storm had begun to form. A man can take only so much before something inside him breaks. In the drawer beside me was a plain white envelope with a business card tucked inside Mr. Roberts' Ozark Realty Group. His words from last week echoed in my ears. "That house could go for $750 easy, maybe more. The market is hot, George." My daughter thought she had me cornered, thought I was powerless, a pensioner with nowhere to go. But she had no idea that the ground she stood on was mine. I slipped the card back into the envelope and closed the drawer. Not yet, I told myself. My answer wouldn't come today, not with words. When the time came, it would echo louder than anything Anna could imagine. The morning dragged on. I shuffled through the house like a ghost, every step heavy. The scent of coffee lingered, mingled with bleach from the freshly mopped floors. Anna kept the house spotless, as if shining the counters and polishing the floors could cover the cracks spreading through the family that lived inside. Around 9, Sophie came down the stairs, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her face lit with the soft kindness that reminded me so much of Linda. "Morning, Grandpa," she said, pouring herself a bowl of cereal. I forced a smile. "Morning, sweetheart." She sat across from me, her brown eyes curious. "Are you okay?" she asked, between bites, her tone careful, like she already knew something was wrong. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just a little tired." She studied me for a long moment, then let it go. She talked about her classes, her roommates, her professor, who seemed intent on ruining her semester. I nodded, offering encouragement, while my thoughts circled back to Anna's ultimatum. When Sophie finished her cereal, she leaned over and kissed my cheek. "Don't let Mom stress you out too much," she whispered before rushing out the door. Her words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they revealed just how much she saw, more than Anna thought, more than I wanted her to. When the door closed, the house fell silent again. Heavy, suffocating. I sat at the table, the folded bills still in my pocket, until the sound of tires crunching in the driveway made me tense. Michael's brother Brian was here. His boots thudded against the steps, his voice loud before he even reached the kitchen. And in that moment, I knew Anna's ultimatum was only the beginning. The vultures were circling, and they all thought I was too weak to fight back. But they were wrong. Very wrong. Brian stormed into the kitchen without knocking, his broad shoulders nearly filling the doorway. His wife Melissa trailed behind him, her eyes darting nervously from me to the floor. "George," Brian said, clapping his hands together like we were about to strike some kind of business deal. "We need to talk." I stayed seated at the table, my coffee cooling beside me. I didn't invite him to sit, but he dragged a chair out anyway, scraping the legs across the tile until the sound made my teeth ache. Melissa sank into the chair next to him, her hands twisting the strap of her purse. "You know things are rough at work," Brian began, leaning forward with his elbows on the table. "Freight's slow contracts are drying up. Just need a little help to get through this month." He paused, waiting for me to respond. I stayed silent. "$5,000 should cover it," he added casually, like he was asking for spare change. "You've always helped before." Melissa's face softened, her lips parting like she wanted to say something, but she stayed quiet. She always did. I folded my hands in front of me. "Brian," I said slowly, "you're a grown man with a family of your own. You need to figure this out without leaning on me every time." His jaw tightened. "I thought family was supposed to help each other. Or do you only care about Sophie now?" The jab cut deeper than I expected, but I didn't flinch. I stood, my chair creaking. "I've given you more than enough over the years. It's time you learn to stand on your own 2 feet. Brian's face turned red, his voice rising. "Fine, don't help me, but don't be surprised when everything falls apart." He shoved the chair back and stomped toward the door. Melissa lingered a moment, her eyes meeting mine with a mixture of pity and apology, then followed him out. The slam of the door echoed through the house, rattling the picture frames on the wall. I sat down again, my hands trembling slightly as I rubbed my temples. First Anna with her demands, now Brian with his pleas, both circling me like vultures, each trying to take what they could. On the desk in my room, Linda's photograph seemed to look at me with quiet judgment. "What happened to them, George?" There I imagined her asking. "What happened to the family we raised?" I had no answer. That afternoon, Anna returned from work, her heels sharp against the floor. She dropped her purse on the counter and glanced at me sitting in the kitchen. "Brian was here, wasn't he?" she asked flatly. I nodded. She sighed, shaking her head. "He can't keep a job, can't manage money, and then he runs to you. You probably told him no, which means he'll be calling me next begging for help. You see why I need you to pay more. You're not the only one draining this family." Her words were sharp, but a sliver of truth was buried in them. Still, I refused to let her use me as her scapegoat. "I already pay what you ask," I said quietly, "and I keep quiet about everything else. That should be enough." Her eyes hardened. "It's not enough. Not anymore. You're going to have to step up, Dad, or I'll make arrangements for you." Her threat hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. She turned and walked away, her perfume lingering like smoke after a fire. That evening, Sophie found me sitting on the porch, the autumn sun sinking low over the neighborhood. She dropped her backpack beside her chair and sat down, resting her head against my arm like she used to when she was little. "You look tired," she said softly. I forced a faint smile. "It's been a long day." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I hate the way they talk to you. It's not right." I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "Don't worry about me, Sophie. Focus on your studies. That's what matters." She tilted her head to look up at me, her eyes shining in the fading light. "Promise me you'll take care of yourself." "I promise," I said. The words tasted bitter. The next few days blurred together, each one marked by small confrontations, sideways glares, and whispers I wasn't supposed to hear. Anna grew sharper with her demands, Brian more desperate with his pleas. And through it all, Sophie's concern became more visible, her gentle questions, her lingering glances, her whispered encouragements that I didn't deserve. One night after the house had gone quiet, I sat alone in my room with the envelope in my hand. Inside was the deed to the house signed 2 decades ago. My name, George Whitman, printed boldly at the bottom. Owner. The truth was right there in black and white. I traced the letters with my finger, my heart heavy. They think I'm powerless, Linda, I whispered to the photograph of my wife. They think I'm nothing but a bill to be paid. But they have no idea. A knock at the door startled me. I shoved the envelope back into the drawer and cleared my throat. Come in. Anna pushed the door open, her arms folded. I've been looking at apartments, she said bluntly. If you can't handle the new arrangement, maybe it's best if you find somewhere else to live. There are senior facilities in town that could take you. Her words struck like a blow. She wasn't just demanding more money, now she was threatening to cast me out completely. I've lived in this house longer than you've been alive, I said evenly. I'm not leaving. Her jaw tightened. We'll see. She closed the door behind her softly but with finality. I sat there in the dark, my chest tight, the folder beneath my bed, like a loaded weapon. I knew then the time was coming when I would have to use it. The following morning, I stepped outside to collect the newspaper. Doug, my neighbor from across the street, waved cheerfully as he walked over with a hedge trimmer in hand. Morning, George, he said. Beautiful day, huh? I forced a smile. Sure is. He wiped sweat from his brow. You ever think about selling this place? Market's crazy right now. You'd make a killing. Houses like this don't stay on the market more than a week. I chuckled lightly. Not for me, Doug, not yet. But my mind was racing. His words echoed what Mr. Roberts had told me. The opportunity was real. The power was mine. And for the first time in years, I felt a spark of control flicker inside me. The house felt heavy that week, like the air itself had grown thicker, pressing down on my chest every time I walked from one room to the next. Anna's words echoed in my mind, senior facilities. You don't belong here anymore. But I did belong here. This was my home. My name was on the deed signed back in 2003, long before Anna or Brian had laid a single claim on it. I kept the folder hidden under my bed, the papers inside like a shield waiting for the day I would have to raise it. That evening, I sat on the porch in my old lawn chair, the wood creaking beneath me. The cicadas buzzed in the trees, their steady drone filling the silence. Sophie came out and sat beside me, her eyes curious. You've been quiet lately, Grandpa, she said softly. I gave her a tired smile. Just thinking. About Mom, she asked carefully. Her voice was gentle, but her words carried weight. I sighed, staring out at the street. About all of it. She leaned her head against my arm. Don't let them make you feel small. You're not. Her words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they revealed how much she saw. She wasn't a child anymore. She noticed the tension, the way her mother barked orders, the way her uncle stormed through the kitchen demanding money. I wish she didn't see it. I wish she still believed in the happy family we once were. Later that night, after Sophie had gone upstairs, I opened the drawer and pulled out the folder. I spread the papers across the desk. The deed with my name. The bank statement showing every payment I had made. The lottery stub from 2003, yellowed but still legible. I traced my name with my finger, whispering to Linda's photograph. They think I'm powerless. They think I'm just an old man with nothing left. But they're wrong. A knock on the door startled me again. Quickly, I slid the papers back into the folder and shoved it under the bed. Dad, Anna's voice came through the wood. I hesitated, then said, come in. She opened the door, her arms folded. I need an answer. Are you paying or not? I stared at her, keeping my face calm. I told you I'll handle it. That doesn't mean anything, she snapped. You say a lot of things. What I need is an answer I can trust. Her eyes burned into mine, sharp and unforgiving. I said nothing more. Finally, she turned and left the door, closing softly behind her. The next day passed in a blur. Patrick, her husband, avoided me as he always did, retreating to his office upstairs whenever voices rose. Anna clattered dishes in the kitchen, her movements sharp and impatient. By mid-afternoon, Brian returned. He barged into the house without knocking, Melissa trailing behind as always. Dad, he said loudly, his boots thudding against the hardwood. We need to talk. I braced myself. This isn't just about me, he said, dropping heavily into a chair. If I don't get this money, Melissa and the kids are going to suffer. We'll lose the car. Maybe even the house. Melissa flinched slightly at the word lose. Even she didn't believe him. 5,000, he pressed. That's all I need, just until the next job comes through. I shook my head slowly. Brian, I can't keep doing this. You've asked too many times. It's never just 5,000. It's never just until next time. It's always something new. His face turned red, his fists clenched. So that's it. You're just going to let me drown. What kind of father does that? A father who already gave more than he should have, I said quietly. He slammed his fist on the table, the cups rattling. You think you're teaching me a lesson? You think this makes you some kind of hero? You're just a bitter old man who doesn't care about his own son. Melissa touched his arm gently. Brian, please, let's go. He gritted his teeth, then stormed out the door, slamming so hard the windows shook. Melissa lingered, her eyes meeting mine with sorrow. I'm sorry, she whispered before following him out. The silence that followed was suffocating. That night, Sophie slipped into my room. She perched on the edge of my bed, her eyes wide. I heard them yelling again. Are you all right? I forced a smile. I'm fine. Her brow furrowed. They don't treat you right. It's not fair. I patted her hand. Don't worry about me, sweetheart. You focus on your studies. But she didn't look convinced. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. I see you, Grandpa. I know what they're doing, and it's not right. Her words tightened my chest with both pride and sorrow. She was the only one who saw me. The following morning, Doug waved from across the street as I collected the paper. He strolled over, hedge trimmer in hand. You ever think about selling this place? He asked again, wiping sweat from his brow. The market's on fire. You could make a killing. I bet you'd get $750 easy. I chuckled, but my mind was racing. When he walked away, his words echoed in my head. $750, maybe more. The power was mine, sitting quietly in a folder under my bed. They thought they held the cards. They thought they could corner me, control me, strip me of my dignity. But they had no idea. The storm was coming, and I would be the one holding the lightning. The house felt different after that day with Doug. His words about the market wouldn't leave my mind circling like a restless bird's $750, maybe more. For years, I had played the quiet role, nodding, paying, swallowing my pride to keep the peace. But for the first time in a long while, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. I wasn't cornered. I wasn't powerless. I had the deed, the papers, the truth. And when the time came, my answer wouldn't be spoken. It would be written in ink. The kitchen the next morning smelled of fresh coffee and the faint tang of bleach. Anna was already bustling around, stacking plates too loudly, her irritation sharp in every movement. Patrick sat at the table with his phone already lost in his work, unwilling to look at me. Sophie came down last, bright and warm like always. She kissed my cheek. Morning, Grandpa. I smiled faintly. Morning, sweetheart. Anna's eyes cut to me, her jaw tight. Dad, we've been patient, but I need an answer. If you can't pay more, then we need to start making arrangements. Facilities? Apartments? Somewhere else? The word facilities twisted in my chest like a knife. I wrapped my hands around my mug, the heat grounding me. It's taken care of, I said softly. Her brows furrowed. What does that mean? It means you don't have to worry. But she wasn't satisfied. She never was. Later that afternoon, Brian showed up again. His boots hit the floor hard as he walked in without knocking. Melissa followed quiet as a shadow, her eyes darting nervously. You've been ignoring my calls, Brian said, his voice sharp. I need that money. 5,000. You've always helped before. I stayed seated at the table, folding the newspaper neatly before setting it down. Not this time. His jaw tightened. I thought family was supposed to help each other. I've given you more than enough, I said evenly. It's time you learn to stand on your own. His face flushed, his voice rising. So you're just going to let me drown? What kind of father are you? The kind who finally learned that giving isn't the same as saving. For a moment, I thought he might hit me. His fists clenched, his breath ragged. But Melissa touched his arm, whispering, Brian, please. With a curse, he stormed out again, the door rattling in its frame. Melissa lingered, her eyes filled with quiet apology, before slipping out after him. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my desk with the folder open, the papers spread before me like a map of everything I had endured. The deed with my name, the bank statements, the lottery stub, all proof of the truth I had carried alone. I whispered to Linda's photograph, her smile frozen in time. They think they can push me out, but the ground they stand on is mine, and when I move, they'll feel it. The next day I called Tom Grant, the realtor. His voice on the phone was brisk but warm. "Frank, you picked the right time," he said. "Springfield's market is hotter than ever. We can get you top dollar. 740, maybe higher. Are you ready to move forward?" My hand trembled, but not from fear, from release. "Yes," I said finally, "let's do it." When Tom came by later that week, his camera slung over his shoulder, Anna's eyes narrowed immediately. "Who's this?" she asked, her voice suspicious. "A friend," I said calmly, "helping me with some paperwork." She looked unconvinced, but she didn't press. Patrick barely glanced up from his phone, lost in numbers and contracts. Tom walked through each room, snapping photos, nodding approvingly. "You'll have offers fast," he whispered to me. And for the first time in years, I felt like someone was on my side. That evening, Anna cornered me in the hallway. I saw him with a camera. "What are you doing?" I met her glare calmly, preparing for change. Her face twisted with confusion. "What change?" "You'll know soon enough." She let out a sharp laugh, shaking her head. "You're losing it, Dad. Playing riddles doesn't make you strong. It makes you pathetic." I said nothing, only walked past her, my steps steady. Sophie found me in my room later, her voice soft. "Grandpa, are you okay?" I smiled faintly, patting her hand. "Better than I've been in a long time." Her eyes searched mine, full of both fear and faith. "I don't know what you're planning, but I'm with you." My chest tightened. That's all I need. Days blurred together after that. Each morning, Anna's heels clicked against the floor like gunshots. Each evening, Brian's angry voicemails piled up. Patrick buried himself in his office, pretending none of it existed. But inside me, something had shifted. The storm was no longer something I feared. It was something I was calling forth. The contract sat waiting on my desk. The pen lay beside it, gleaming in the lamplight. I picked it up, my hand steady, my heart pounding. And I signed. Each letter was a declaration. Each stroke was freedom. That night, as I laid the papers neatly back into the folder, I whispered to Linda again. "It's almost over, Maggie. They'll finally understand." The storm was coming. And I was the one holding the lightning. Tom arrived just after 8 when the light through the east-facing windows made the hardwood glow like honey. He parked 2 houses down and walked up without his jacket, camera slung low, a clipboard tucked under his arm, as if he were a home inspector instead of the man preparing to change the course of my life. "Morning, George," he said in a low voice. "You still want this quiet?" "Quiet as a church," I answered. "No yard sign, not yet." He nodded. "We'll do a private pre-market. I'll push it to my best buyer's agents as a coming soon. Photos today, showings by appointment only when the house is empty. You pick the windows. I'll work around your schedule." I gave him the times I knew Anna would be at the bank and Patrick in his office downtown. He scribbled, "Watch the way light fell across the living room," then began "Soft shoes on old floors lens," clicking like a modest metronome. He made my home look the way it once felt, warm, orderly, worth keeping. When he finished, he set down the camera and pulled out a form. "You'll see language for escrow, inspection, contingency, and earnest money," he said, tapping the page. "We can push for a 14-day close if a cash buyer bites. There's also an option for a 2-week rent back. That can give you time to move without anyone breathing down your neck." "Rent back," I repeated, tasting the unfamiliar phrase, how clean and practical it sounded. "Yes, put it in." Tom slid the paper toward me and handed me a pen. My hand didn't shake this time. I signed where he marked, the ink drying quick and permanent. He tucked the packet back into his folder like a magician palming a card. "I'll start making calls," he said, standing. "You keep living like nothing's happening." "That's what I'm best at," I said, and he gave me the kind of smile men trade when they both survive something. He slipped out the side door at 9:15, 5 minutes before Anna's heels would begin their crisp commute across the kitchen tile. I spent the rest of the morning doing the kind of chores no one notices until they stop getting done. I folded dish towels, scrubbed a coffee ring from the counter, wound the grandfather clock in the hall until its slow heart resumed its work. Then I opened the hall closet and pulled down 2 boxes labeled Christmas and Linda's books. Dust rose like incense. I carried them to my room and set them near the dresser, out of the line of casual sight. That afternoon, when the house was quiet, I drove to the post office and rented a P.O. box. The clerk slid a small key across the counter, indifferent, in kind in that federal way. I put the key on a ring with the one that opened the garage and felt for the first time in months the faint click of something inside me locking into place. From there, I stopped by a tidy brick building with geraniums in the window boxes, Willow Arms Apartments. Miss Alvarez, the property manager, had a handshake you could trust and a way of listening that made a man feel seen without being inspected. Something small, I told her. Quiet. On the second floor, if you've got it. I like a view of trees. Unit 2B, she said, and when she opened the door, I stood in the little living room with its clean carpet and cheap blinds and felt relief move through me like a tide. No one's voice lived in these walls. No slammed doors, no sharp heels, no debts disguised as favors. Just space, air, a key that would belong to me alone. Can I hold it for 30 days, I asked. If your references check and you put down the deposit, she said. They will, I answered, and for once I knew I wasn't exaggerating. I signed, left a check that felt like a flag planted on new ground, and carried the thin folder out to the truck under a sky that had the good sense to keep its distance. That night I moved like a man packing a life in plain sight. I thinned the closet by 3 shirts, boxed the paperbacks I'd already read twice, wrapped Linda's cake stand in 2 dish towels and nested it inside a grocery bag, labeled with her handwriting from some long ago Thanksgiving. I stacked everything behind the bed where a casual glance wouldn't catch it. Sophie found me there cross-legged on the floor with a roll of tape and a black marker. What are you doing? She asked, voice low, as if she already knew but wanted to be told. Making sure I don't leave a mess, I said. The lie was gentle, but it was still a lie. It landed between us like a feather that somehow made a sound. She sat beside me, touched the edge of the box. I can help. I know you can, I said, meeting her eyes, but I'm asking you not to. Not yet. She searched my face, found what she needed, and nodded. Okay, but if anyone tries to hurt you, they won't, I said, because I wanted it to be true. And if they do, the house will protect me. How, she whispered. By telling the truth, I said, in public where everyone can hear. She swallowed and leaned her head against my shoulder. We sat like that until the air grew cool and the cicadas changed their song. Tom's text came the next morning at 10:11, 2 cash buyers, both above ask. One offers 14-day close plus rent back. Want a review at 2 p.m. I read it twice, then a third time, the words arranging themselves into a future above ask cash rent back. The practical poetry of a man who deals in houses and knows they hold more than furniture. At 1:57, Tom slid into the booth at Carter's Diner and set a thin stack of papers between us. He ordered coffee and talked me through the numbers, earnest money wired by close of business inspection, waived appraisal, waived proof of funds attached. I listened, signing where he pointed, my breath steady. Escrow opens today, he said. They want a final walkthrough the morning before closing. Do it, I said. They can come at 10. Anna's at work then. Tom looked at me. You sure you don't want me to post the yard sign? It'll be public in MLS this afternoon anyway. I shook my head. No sign, I said. Not 1 inch of warning more than they already have. He slid the signed offer back into a folder and tapped the cover twice. You did the hard part, George. No, I said, watching light slant across the chrome napkin holder. The hard part is going home and not letting it show. That evening, a small thing gave me away. Anna stood in the hall staring at the bare wall where the wedding photo used to hang Linda, in ivory, me in a suit 2 sizes smaller, both of us laughing at something the photographer made us say. Where is it, she asked, not turning. In a safer place, I said. She spun, eyes narrow. What does that mean? It means I don't want it damaged, I answered, which was also true if not complete. You're hiding something, she said, scorn curling her mouth. You think being mysterious makes you strong? It makes you foolish? I met her gaze and said nothing. She hated silence most of all. She stormed off, heels stabbing the floor, and I went back to my room and sat in the dark until the walls remembered how to breathe. 2 days later, Brian returned. He came in loud and left louder, the way a storm tries to make up in noise what it lacks in rain. He demanded a cue, circled the table like an animal deciding where to bite. When he slammed his fist down, Sophie appeared in the doorway, chin high. Enough, she said, and the single word landed like a door finally closing. Brian stared at her, then at me, and left a gouge in the air as he went. After that, I made 3 quiet moves. I put our family photos into a banker's box and carried it to a storage unit on West Chestnut. I opened a small safe deposit box and placed the deed and Linda's ring inside, and I set up mail forwarding to the P.O. box, the form simple and official, my new address printed in block letters that even grief could read. At night, I sat with the folder open and watched the numbers line up like soldiers offer accepted funds, verified escrow open closing set. The calendar on my wall gained a circle around a date. When I swallowed, I could taste the paper. On a soft Sunday, Tom called again. "We're through title," he said. "No liens. You're clean as a whistle." "Of course I am," I said, and laughter rose in me like a long withheld breath. The only thing I ever owed this house was care. He chuckled, then turned gentle. "You ready for the walkthrough?" "I've been ready for years," I answered. After I hung up, I carried Linda's photograph to the window. The late light caught her hair, set her smiling in motion. I touched the glass and spoke so only she could hear. "It's almost time, Linda. They'll hear the truth in the clicking of a lock and the turning of a key." In the hallway, footsteps paused, then moved on. In the kitchen, the clock ticked faithfully toward a morning when strangers would admire this house and call it home. And I at last would leave on my own 2 feet. The storm had gathered, the air tasted electric, and the first drop, small, cold, honest, had finally fallen. The morning of the final walkthrough broke sharp and bright, the kind of light that makes even the oldest shingles look new. I rose before dawn, dressed in my cleanest flannel, and sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that cooled untouched. Every sound in the house, the hiss of pipes, the creak of rafters, the ticking clock felt amplified, like the house itself knew its last secret was about to spill into the open. At 10 sharp, the doorbell rang. Tom's car was in the driveway, his suit pressed and folder tucked neatly under his arm. Behind him, the Harrisons stood, 2 young parents with wide eyes and a pair of children clutching plastic dinosaurs and dolls. Their voices were hushed, reverent, even like they were stepping into a church instead of someone else's fight. I opened the door. "Come in," I said. Anna's heels struck the floor behind me before the words had fully left my mouth. "Who are these people?" she demanded. Patrick appeared too, tie loose, his eyes wary. Sophie lingered at the top of the stairs, clutching the railing as if she already knew what was coming. Tom cleared his throat. "Mr. Whitaker, these are the Harrisons. They're the buyers. We're here for a brief walkthrough before tomorrow's closing." Anna's face drained of color. "Buyers closing. What is he talking about, Dad?" I met her eyes steadily, my voice even. "I sold the house." The words hit like thunder. Silence followed, then Patrick's sharp intake of breath. Anna staggered back a step, her hand flying to her chest as if she'd been struck. You can't. This is our home." "No," I said softly, "it was always mine. I bought it 20 years ago. Every check you thought was rent was just money. I moved from one account to another. I let you believe it because I wanted peace. But when you turned my roof into a weapon, you left me no choice." The Harrisons shifted uncomfortably, but Tom pressed on, professional as ever. "Shall we take a look around?" he asked the young couple, who nodded hesitantly. As they moved from room to room, marveling at the crown molding and the sunny backyard, Anna trailed behind them, muttering, shaking her head. "You betrayed us," she hissed, finally rounding on me. "You've ruined everything. Where are we supposed to go?" "You had years to build your own foundation," I replied. "Instead, you built it on me. That's not my failure. It's yours." Patrick's voice was hollow, stun. "You should have told us." "If I had, you'd have tried to take it anyway," I said, not unkindly. Sophie descended the stairs, then her voice clear, cutting through the chaos. "He didn't ruin anything. You did. You treated him like a tenant in his own house, and now you're shocked he finally stood up for himself." Anna whirled, disbelief etched into every line of her face. "You're defending him." "I'm defending what's right," Sophie answered, her eyes wet but steady. The silence that followed was heavier than shouting. The Harrisons, sensing the storm, wrapped up quickly. Tom shook my hand with practiced calm. "All set for tomorrow, George. They'll bring the cashier's check. You'll hand over the keys." When the door shut behind them, the quiet in the room seemed to scream. Anna pressed the folded papers to her chest as if they might change if she held them hard enough. Patrick rubbed his temples, his lips moving soundlessly. Sophie came to my side, slipped her small hand into mine, and held tight. That evening, Brian stormed in, red-faced and furious, Melissa trailing behind, with apologies already in her eyes. He slammed his fists on the table. "You sold it. Are you out of your mind? You've destroyed this family." "I reclaimed what was mine," I said, meeting his rage with calm. You'll regret this, he shouted. His spit flecked the table. You'll die alone in some dingy apartment with no one to care about you. I rose slowly, my chair scraping back. Better to die free than to live as a burden in my own home. For a moment, the air itself seemed to hold its breath. Brian's chest heaved, fists clenched, but Melissa tugged his arm, her voice trembling. Please, Brian, stop. He glared at me, eyes wild, then stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Melissa lingered, her gaze soft with sorrow. I'm sorry, she whispered before following him. When silence returned, Sophie leaned against me, whispering, They'll never forgive you. I placed my hand over hers. I don't need their forgiveness, I said. I just need my dignity. That night I sat by the window with Linda's photograph, the papers stacked neatly on the desk beside me. Outside, the cicadas hummed steady and ancient, as if reminding me that storms pass, but truth endures. I touched the frame, whispering, It's almost over, Linda. Tomorrow the keys leave my hand, but not my dignity. For the first time in years, I felt peace stirring, small, but sure, like the first warm breeze before spring. The morning of the closing dawned clean and bright, the sky a clear stretch of blue, the air crisp with early autumn's promise. I dressed carefully, plaid shirt, polished shoes. The jacket Linda had once said made me look distinguished. My hands were steady as I tucked the final envelope into my pocket. This was it. Anna sat at the kitchen table, her face hollowed by sleepless nights, her voice cold. If you go through with this, Dad, I'll never forgive you. I met her gaze without flinching. Forgiveness was never what I needed. Respect was, and you never gave it. She turned away sharply, muttering under her breath. But I didn't pause. Sophie stood by the door, her eyes red, but her chin high. I'll come with you, she whispered. I touched her cheek gently. No, sweetheart. You have your life ahead of you. This is mine to finish. Her arms clung to me tightly. I love you, Grandpa. I love you too, I whispered. Then I stepped out into the crisp sunlight and climbed into Tom's car. The closing was quick signatures on thick paper handshakes, the transfer of keys. Tom's smile was professional, but there was something softer behind it too, a quiet respect. It's done, George, he said firmly. You're free. Free. The word echoed through me as I stepped out into the sunlight, chest swelling with both triumph and sorrow. When I returned that afternoon, Anna and Patrick stood on the porch. Her face was pale and hollow, his drawn with disbelief. Sophie lingered on the steps, her arms folded, eyes locked on me. Anna's voice trembled. So it's done. It's done, I said simply. You didn't even give us a chance, she cried, her tears spilling. I gave you years, I said softly, and all you gave me was disrespect. Her shoulders shook. You've left us with nothing. You had the chance to build something of your own, I replied. Instead, you built it on me. That's not my failure. That's yours. Patrick's voice broke in, weary. Where will you go, Dad? Somewhere peaceful, I answered. Somewhere I can live without being treated like a stranger in my own home. Sophie's eyes brimmed with tears. You're not leaving me, are you? I brushed her cheek gently. Never. Wherever I go, you'll always have a place with me. Anna let out a bitter laugh through her sobs. You've destroyed this family. No, I said softly, I saved myself from it. I walked down the steps, past the lawn I had mowed 1,000 times, past the flower beds Linda once planted with her careful hands. I didn't look back. The apartment I moved into was small, 2 rooms, modest furniture, plain white walls. But the silence inside was clean. No shouting, no demands, no weight pressing me into the floorboards. I unpacked slowly, placing Linda's photograph on the dresser, stacking books on the narrow shelf, folding clothes neatly into the closet. When I was done, I sat by the window with a cup of coffee and let the quiet sink into me. For the first time in years, I breathed deeply, freely. Days passed with gentle rhythm. I walked to the market in the mornings, nodding to neighbors who smiled back without judgment. I read in the afternoons, letting the sunlight warm my chair. In the evenings, I sat on the porch listening to cicadas hum their ancient song. Sophie visited often. She brought laughter stories from school, and sometimes tears she didn't want her mother to see. One afternoon, she carried in a box of photographs she had rescued before the house changed hands. We spread them across the table, our fingers tracing faces and moments long gone. She would be proud of you, Sophie whispered, her voice trembling. My throat tightened as I looked at Linda's smile, frozen in those glossy squares. I hope so, I murmured. Sophie leaned against me. I know she would. Karen never visited. Patrick never called. Michael left a single voicemail, his voice dripping with bitterness, but I deleted it before he finished. They had made their choices. They could live with them. Sophie, though, she remained. She became my anchor, my reminder that love could still survive the cracks. One evening, as the sun bled gold across the rooftops, she sat beside me on the porch, her head against my shoulder. "Do you ever miss the house?" she asked softly. I thought for a long while before answering. I miss the memories. But the house itself, no. It was never about the walls or the roof. It was about the life we built inside, and those memories can't be sold. She nodded slowly, her eyes shining in the twilight. "I'm glad you finally stood up for yourself." "So am I," said quietly. The cicadas droned on the evening air, cooling around us. I looked out at the fading light, Linda's photograph, waiting inside, and whispered one last time, "We're free, Linda. We're finally free." And to you watching this story unfold, I'll leave you with this: dignity isn't something others can grant you. It's something you choose to take back, even if it costs you everything else. If this story moved you, share it. Subscribe for more stories that remind us that even in betrayal there can be strength, and even in endings there can be freedom.